The letter that waited 40 years. The envelope was cream-colored, worn at the edges, as if it had traveled a long way or had been carried in someone's pocket for years before being sent. Margaret held it with trembling hands. Her name was written in handwriting she recognized instantly, even though she hadn't seen it in 4 decades. Thomas. Her heart seized. She sat down slowly at the kitchen table, the afternoon light pouring through the window, casting long shadows across the floor. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She had spent 40 years building a life without him. 40 years convincing herself she had made the right choice. 40 years pretending she didn't wonder. And now this. A letter. From the man she had loved and lost because of words she could never take back. The past. It had been autumn when everything fell apart. They were young then. Margaret, 28, Thomas, 31. They had been planning a future together. A small house, a garden, maybe children someday. But that night in the kitchen of her mother's old house, everything shattered. They had been arguing about something that felt enormous at the time. His reluctance to settle down, her fear that he would never commit, the unspoken doubts that had been piling up like stones between them. She said things she didn't mean. He said things he couldn't unsay. And then, in a moment of wounded pride, Thomas had walked to the door. "Maybe we're not meant for this," he said quietly. Margaret's throat tightened. She wanted to stop him, wanted to say, "Wait, don't go. Let's talk when we're calmer." But pride held her tongue. "Then go," she said coldly. And he did. The door closed, and neither of them reached out again. The passage of time years passed. Margaret married someone else. A kind man, steady and safe. They had a quiet life together. He passed away 10 years ago, leaving her with memories that were warm, but never quite complete. She raised children, watched them grow, became a grandmother. But in the quiet moments, when she folded laundry alone or sat on the porch at dusk, her mind wandered back to Thomas. She wondered where he was, if he was happy, if he ever thought of her. She had almost called him once, 20 years ago. Her hand had hovered over the phone. But what would she say? "I'm sorry. I was wrong." Too much time had passed. Too much pride still lingered. So she hung up before dialing. Thomas had lived a different life. He never married. He worked. He traveled. He filled his days with motion, convinced that if he stayed busy enough, he wouldn't feel the emptiness. But at night, alone in hotel rooms or empty apartments, he thought of her. The way she laughed, the way she challenged him, the way she made him feel seen. He had written letters over the years, dozens of them, but never sent a single one. What right did he have, after all this time? She had probably forgotten him, moved on, built a life he had no place in. But as he grew older, as his hair turned gray and his knees began to ache, something shifted. He realized, time doesn't heal regret, it just makes it heavier. The invitation. On his 72nd birthday, Thomas sat alone in his small apartment, staring at a photograph he had kept for 40 years. It was Margaret, young and smiling, standing in a field of wildflowers. He looked at it for a long time. Then he pulled out a piece of paper and began to write. Not an explanation, not an apology, just the truth. "Margaret, I don't know if this will reach you. I don't know if you'll want to hear from me. But I'm writing because I've carried something with me for 40 years, and I think it's time I finally said it. I was wrong to leave. I was wrong to stay silent, and I have thought of you every day since." He paused, his hands shaking slightly. Then he added, "If you're willing, I'd like to see you, just once. No expectations, just to say the things I should have said long ago." He signed it, addressed the envelope, and mailed it before he could change his mind. The meeting, 2 weeks later, Margaret stood at the entrance of a small park by the river, the same park where they used to walk, a lifetime ago. Her hands were cold despite the mild weather. Her heart beat unevenly. She almost turned back, but then she saw him. Thomas was sitting on a bench beneath an old oak tree, his shoulders slightly hunched, his hair white now but still thick. He looked up. Their eyes met, and for a moment, 40 years dissolved. Margaret walked slowly toward him. He stood uncertain, his hands at his sides. They didn't embrace. Not yet. They just looked at each other. Two people who had once been everything to each other, now strangers shaped by time. Margaret, he said quietly. Thomas. They sat down on the bench, a careful distance between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion, I've thought about what I would say if I ever saw you again. I practiced it 1,000 times. But now, I don't know where to start. Margaret's eyes glistened. Start with the truth. He nodded slowly. I was afraid, he said. Afraid I wasn't enough. Afraid I'd disappoint you. So I walked away before you could leave me first. And I've regretted it every single day since. Margaret's breath caught. I was afraid too, she whispered. Afraid you didn't really want me. So I let you go instead of fighting for us. And I've carried that with me all these years. Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but full. Thomas reached out, hesitated, then gently placed his hand over hers. His skin was warm, weathered, familiar. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. Tears slipped down Margaret's cheeks. So am I. The reconciliation. They sat there for a long time, hands joined, watching the river flow past. They didn't solve everything. They couldn't undo 40 years. But they spoke, honestly, gently, about the lives they'd lived, the people they'd become, the moments they'd missed, and slowly, the weight they'd both been carrying began to lift. Not completely, but enough. As the sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the water, Margaret turned to him. Do you think, she hesitated, do you think we get second chances, even this late? Thomas looked at her, really looked, and smiled softly. I think we're living one right now. The lesson, they met again the following week, and the week after that. There was no rush, no grand declarations, just two people, older and wiser, learning to know each other again. And in the quiet spaces between words, they understood something profound. Forgiveness is lighter than regret. Time slips away faster than we think, and it is never, ever too late to mend a broken bond, as long as two hearts are still beating. Pride had stolen 40 years from them, but love, patient and enduring, had waited, and in the end, love had won.